let's continue on to the next menu item. You can see it's called financials. Not a lot of information here, but it is quite detailed. So you can see that there's an accounts payable and accounts receivable. You can click on either of those. As an example, the accounts payable shows the account and the charges for your account so that it's completely transparent. You can follow along. Um, Charges are done at the beginning of the month, so it's usually the first or the second of the month. If it's not, then there's been some change in billing. But normally, charges are done on the first of the month. So what you can do is you can see more detail. So for instance, accounts receivable detail, you could look at more information there. And you could look at the header, but you could also look at the invoice detail. So you could see back in time how many workers were scheduled, and you'd also have a list of those workers as well. So you can see there were 4 workers scheduled that particular month, and therefore there's the charge for 4 workers. Don't forget there's 13% tax as well. So that's can be very detailed information. Again, accounts payable and accounts receivable. But there may be people in your organization where they don't deal with that kind of information, and that's where the security tab comes in. So in this particular example, you can see that we do have an editor. The role is administrator. Technical support is something that we always offer at Nezda Technologies as well, although you can take us out if you'd like to do that, but we certainly would like to be able to help if at all possible. But what you'll see in the right-hand side towards the bottom is the permissions and roles you've set up for your organization. Now, we can see that the administrators have access to everything, although check in and check out. Let's go ahead and save that. So we have a role called administrator, and we're able to check and uncheck and then make any changes to those permissions. In this particular case, we've created another role, and it's done here. So for instance, you could type in editor, and then you'd add that role. And what you see is another role where you can, of course, remove them here. And you're able to, in a very detailed way, allow certain people in the organization access to various parts or permissions to view various parts of the organization. So in this case, we'd want them to see the chat page, but we might not want them to receive the financials and the accounts receivable. And security will allow them to make changes. We don't want them to be able to do this, but we do want them to be able to view the kiosk as well, the check-in and check-out. We might not allow them to edit billing, and there are some other changes that we can make. And anytime we do make a change, we just go ahead and save that. And then what we're able to do is, if we wanted to make a change, we've already added the editor, we can then change their role to an editor or administrator and then save that role. And if we wanted to add an editor, we just need to add an address or a name. If we wanted to add Pebbles, for instance, we would be able to find them since they're already in our organization. We don't add someone new here. We just choose from someone who's already connected to our organization. And then we could go ahead and choose a role of editor or administrator. In this case, let's make Pebbles an editor for this account. If we were to log in with Pebbles, in fact, let me try to do that. If we were to log in as Pebbles, then what we'd be able to see is the view of Pebbles. So go ahead and save that. But if we see here now the drop-down menu, Pebbles now has access. And notice that there are some things she doesn't have access to: security, and she doesn't have access to financials. So that's something that as the organization administrator, we're able to set that. We'd like to have people help us perhaps in the scheduling and managing, but they don't need to have access to all of the permissions in the organization. So let's go ahead and return to the original administrator position. Once again, we always start as a volunteer, and then we go into the organization, and that is some information about both financials and about some of the security settings that are available.